live stream and podcast for December 8th, 2022. I am Aaron Schatz, the editor-in-chief of Football Outsiders, joined as always by Mike Tanier, senior analyst. And our special guest today is Connor Rogers from SNY TV and the NBC Sports Fantasy Football Happy Hour. He is here to talk about one of the big games of the week and the game we are going to start with, and that is the New York Jets at the Buffalo Bills, the 1 p.m. game. This is the most important game for our Super Bowl odds because of the Bills. They make the Super Bowl in 37% of sims when they win, but 27% if they lose. Meanwhile, the Jets make the playoffs 82% of the time if they win, but 49% of the time if they lose. And of course, these two teams already played 5 weeks ago, and the Jets surprised everyone with a 20-17 upset.
Yeah, it was a big upset. Aaron is fading out a little bit. Connor, you were ground zero for that game. What were your thoughts watching it? What was the reaction?
I think how the Jets took care of the Bills by being physical and capitalizing on their injury report that week. And that's not, it's interesting. Some people have called it fluky circumstances or whatever it is, but at the end of the day, it feels like it's just good game planning. Matt Milano was out that week. Jordan Poyer was out that week. And the Jets essentially to win the game when Zach Wilson was under center, an offense that was much more limited, they just ran the ball right down the field and put the replacement defenders in conflict over and over again, and they could not make a play. So, and then, obviously the real thing that is consistent and no way a week-by-week thing is that the Jets defense has played at a high level, and Stephon Diggs came out of the gate firing and had that 40-plus yard catch to open the game. And then they kept him in check the rest of the game. They forced Josh Allen into bad decisions. Sauce Gardner had a pick. Jordan Whitehead had a pick. The defensive line played pretty well against a Bills O-line that does have question marks throughout this year and injuries as well. So the Jets, they needed to steal a big win against, a more powerful opponent. And that was the one on the calendar so far.
Going back, I hope my audio is good here. I went back and watched the game yesterday, and a couple of things stood out to me. The first is that the problems that the Bills' backup defenders had tackling, which shouldn't be an issue in this game because obviously no Von Miller, but you do have Poyer back and Milano back, and you have Tre'Davious White now. The other thing that got me was that the Jets moved Sauce Gardner around more than they usually do. Like usually Sauce is on the offensive left and Reed is on the offensive right, and that is just the way it works. And if you want your receiver to be covered by Reed, you just move him to the right. And the Jets moved guys around against the Bills more often.
Yeah, and they like to do this now, I believe, in the red area. It hasn't been a trend enough where we can consistently say the Jets are more open to moving their corners, but it's a really good catch that maybe against certain opponents, it's something that they have to consider, especially if they think they have one of the best corners in the game already in Sauce Gardner. Now, the ironic part is DJ Reed has been almost as good. He just doesn't get any of the hype because he's not a rookie. He doesn't have the nickname. He's 5'9". It's, all of these things. But DJ Reed has been maybe just as good as Sauce in those circumstances. So we've seen teams try to move their top receiver in the slot to go against Michael Carter or move them around in general. So it'll be interesting to see the Jets counterattack in this game, knowing that the Bills are going to have a little bit more in the tank. The Bills are playing for that number 1 seed. The Bills have to be angry after that upset loss. And I think that was the most angry I've seen Josh Allen after a game when he put it all on himself. So,
he had a couple of bad picks.
Really, you just didn't see defenders.
Couldn't see the defender because the right tackle was in the way, I guess. And the second one, he just kind of threw it. And Gabe Davis went one way, and Allen thought he was going a different way, and Gardner was just there.
Yeah, he really made a lot of mistakes that, put the game in the Jets' hands. And Trey White and Jordan Poyer, I'm assuming, are good to go for this game. Matt Milano has not practiced this week yet, so that is going to be really interesting to see, and that's a bit of a surprise. They're describing it as a knee injury, which sounds like, I don't know if that's something new. So I would call it the biggest loss the Bills had last time they played in terms of impact of the game, and something that needs to be tracked going into this one.
Right. So much of every Bills week-to-week scouting report is who's there.
Yeah.
And if this many people are there, they're the best team in the NFL. But as it drops to this level, they're vulnerable to stronger teams. And the Jets fill into that category of a stronger team right now.
Yeah, which is not what we
Yeah.
expected, right? Going into
No.
the year. It's not.
Right.
But, and what here's the question, guys, that I like to throw to you as well that I'm looking at. The Jets are so different in this game. Mike White's under center. Garrett Wilson is a drastically different player with anybody not named Zach Wilson. It opens up the run game.
Right.
They've had a million different offensive line combinations. Bam Knight's been a nice find at running back. He's not Brees Hall. But Bam Knight didn't play the last time these teams met. It was James Robinson, who just doesn't look like himself. So this is a totally different game. Von Miller had a strip sack in that game on Zach Wilson. It's a totally different game this time around.
Absolutely. And with White, you see just a more professionalized offense.
Yes.
It's not this, well, we have designed this play that Zach Wilson can execute, and that is how Wilson will get the ball. And then this is how, well, Moore will never get the ball, etc. And like so many people, and it was one thing against the Bears, like, oh, so many guys got involved. It's like, well, the Bears kept handing the ball back. Last week, short of not being able to execute in the end zone, the ball's getting to Azuma, the ball's getting to Moore, the ball's getting to these different guys. And while we're not going to say Mike White is on some tier anywhere along the way, the basic things that can be done, checking down to a secondary target, getting the ball deep to an open receiver, those things are things that the Jets are getting right now.
Yeah, and it's allowed them to even mess with their personnel a little bit. They were so scared of Zach Wilson facing pressure because his eyes would drop instantly that you saw a lot of heavy and tighter sets. And
Right.
that takes, a weapon out of the Jets' pockets, because one thing the Jets are deep at is wide receiver, at pass catcher. They have Garrett Wilson, they have Corey Davis, Denzel Mims, Elijah Moore, and Braxton Berrios. All of those guys are capable of having some kind of impactful role catching the ball. And you can't put them on the field if you need all this extra help for protection. So we saw them go empty a little bit more. It's allowing these guys to all get on the field. And that's because White's just processing quicker. He sees things better. He knows the offense better, and he will hang in there and take a hit to make a throw.
I will say you pointed out that Garrett Wilson is a bit of a different guy now that White is quarterback. Wilson did have a good game in that first game. He had 92 yards, and the Bills are something like 27th against number one wide receivers. So, I would expect another big day from Wilson because, like you said, he does seem to be better with White, and he was already good the first time these two teams played.
Yeah, this is a big one for him, and he's their offense. And the good thing is they finally, and this has been the Jets' problem for a long time, they finally can go other places if that number one guy is taken away or what they do best is taken away. But it feels like outside of, I look at the Green Bay game where Jair Alexander followed him and did a good job really wiping him out. Teams have struggled to do that, no matter how hard they try. And
the Bills don't do that. Even when
No.
Tre'Davious White was healthy, they did. And Tre'Davious White is still not back to 100%.
It feels like they're rotating him.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's going to be a lot of different guys covering Wilson.
Here's the thing, too. Garrett Wilson had, 160 yards last week. He would have had an 80-yard touchdown with a good throw where he destroyed Patrick Peterson. We're talking about a stat line that easily should have been 240. It's just, it's crazy what he can do. And White's been an upgrade for him, but Wilson is just that kind of player already.
Yeah, when people in our Discord will talk about, well, if Garoppolo were here, like they always put that tier of quarterback in, and like the Jets would be whatever 9-2, 8-3, whatever. That's an example of that. If you get the Garoppolo level throw last week, probably get a win because you punch a touchdown in somewhere along the way, and that's the difference from average quarterback, whatever you want to call it, to White, and then White to Wilson is what we see against the Patriots. BU Vandals has a question, and we need you a little bit. What would you say about Jermaine Johnson and how he has progressed as a rookie?
He's been a really good edge setter for them, something that was a huge problem. They got ran all over last year at will, and they've been able to find Jermaine a role that didn't ask him to be a hero because they have Carl Lawson, they have John Franklin Myers, they have Bryce Huff, they have guys that can rush from the edge. Jermaine got hurt, but when you look at it, before he got hurt and then when he came back, he's just been this strong edge setter that can bring a lot of effort as a pass rusher. So he's been rock solid for them in a rookie edge class that has been alarmingly quiet this year.
Yeah, you noticed that, huh? Remember Trayvon Walker? Remember that guy?
Oh my God.
Remember him?
I will say the ESPN stats are interesting. Josh Allen relatively struggles against the blitz this year. He's only 13th in QBR against blitzes, but the Jets only blitzed him twice in the first matchup. So I wonder whether they might blitz him a little bit more in this one.
I think you'll see it sprinkled in. I think they would like him to play in structure because they trust their front four to get home. And that's something that they built the team on. I think they have the most expensive D-line in football. So when you look at it like that, it's let your guys get home. Quinnen's been excellent this year. He's been everything they could have hoped for. Yeah, fantastic. Lawson's run hot and cold, but he's been okay. Bryce Huff's been very, very good. So maybe they'll have to pick their spots when they send it after Allen. That's for sure.
Right. I'd be reluctant to say, let's change who we are and to try to put pressure on Josh Allen.
Exactly.
That seems like it's a great way to.
Well, there's different, it's like there's different kinds of teams. Some teams are like, this is what we do best. We're going to do what we do best. And you have to beat it. Like that was always the way that the Pete Carroll Seahawks were.
Right.
And some teams are like, we're going to try to be able to do everything at a B level. And we're going to do whatever you aren't good at. Like and that's like the Bill Belichick way of thinking. And neither of those ways of thinking is better than the other. And in part, it depends on who your personnel is. But, it sounds like the Jets are more of a, okay, we're going to do what we do and we do it well kind of team on defense.
Yeah, they've gotten that way. And it's interesting, guys. In the beginning of the year, they were blitzing a lot and it was not working. And then Quinnen had that viral blow up on the sideline because they were just blitzing players into his rush lanes and it would just cancel everybody out. And you're looking at it and you're going, why are you taking defenders away from the back end that are just hurting our defensive lines? Quinnen won that war. He was right. And then when you look at their metrics of weeks 1 to 3, that when that blow up happened, and week 4 and on, they've sent less guys and their pressure rate has been drastically higher.
So,
yeah.
I was going to say, you don't think actually about how blitzes will affect being in guys' rush lanes, but it makes some sense that if the blitzes aren't working, that guys are going to get in each other's way.
Blitzing's a skill, and it's fascinating when you evaluate draft prospects every year because they're so young, guys that understand timing of blitzes and guys that don't. And the Jets, they don't have any great blitzers. They kind of just have athletes like Quincy Williams, who's had a nice year, but he's an athlete blitzing, not really a polished veteran blitzing. And I think that's what was coming into play and why it was ultimately hurting the front four.
And you can have that thing where it's like, you're the sacrificial guy. You're not supposed to win. You're supposed to blitz directly into the left side of the center's, shoulder. And the guy's like, I can beat the center on this. And you go smashing into Quinnen Williams, who's waiting for you to take that dude out of his way. And you can coach that up. But then if the kid's like reacting because, they're not like this, experienced player, then you're going to get these mistakes. I want to throw a prop at you. Since we were talking a little bit about Mike White. Mike White over 1.5 interceptions.
Wow.
At plus 165. It's very rare for the house to put any number but 0.5. So 1.5
is plus money.
Huh?
You said it's plus 165 to go over that?
Yeah.
I would probably take the over. I think they let him play in this game and let him throw. And I don't think that necessarily indicates that Mike White will have an awful game. I just think I said it on, Bill's radio this week, and they kind of laughed, but they kind of didn't laugh at it. It's just funny we've gotten here. This game could be a shootout, and both defenses are good. It's just that I think both teams will try to throw consistently in this game because the Jets now trust their quarterback to take advantage of their weapons. They didn't trust Zach Wilson, who threw for 156 the last time they met. And Josh Allen is Josh Allen. We know Josh Allen's not going to stop throwing the ball. So I at that number, plus 165, I would think he gets the 2.
He played well last week, had 2 picks.
Yep.
One was a tip drill.
One was the tip, yeah.
Yeah, his big game last year, not the Bills game, which was a mess, was a 2-pick game. He threw 3 touchdowns. I think I'm playing that one. I'll play that right now. You guys talk.
The Allen is interesting. He got like 35 yards or something, a 35-yard touchdown on a run around left end in the first game. But Wilson also scrambled for a couple of third down conversions that were pretty necessary. The Jets played better than I think people realized. They won by 3 points, but they actually had a 62-yard drive at one point that got stopped by a strip sack. So they actually had, like, they were more efficient than the Bills. This was not like a lucky win. Like, they actually outplayed the Bills, I think, in this first game. So, I mean, whether they can do that again is going to be difficult. But the one thing I think, White's not a scrambler, right? Like, he's not going to
No.
go scrambling for 3rd and 5 the way Wilson did.
No, he won't. And going back to how weird this game was, I think it was that drive with the strip sack. The Jets are flying down the field that drive, and the sky cam cable breaks. And they
Yes.
essentially have another halftime. It took
Right.
it was unbelievable how long I think it took 15 minutes to get this sorted out. And some people don't believe in momentum, some people hate momentum. The Bills defense could not figure anything out on this drive, and they have a halftime stop the drive.
Right.
So it's things like that.
Yeah, it was weird. And then they had the strip sack, but then Allen threw the interception to Gardner
sauce.
2
Yep.
plays later, and then the Jets got the ball back, and then they scored a touchdown.
Yeah.
That's not momentum. That's something where the coaches can actually sit down and go over some stuff with guys.
Yes.
Guys can take a 10-minute break if they're gassed. Etc. That's not just, well, the game went a certain way. That's really unique circumstances.
Yeah, it allowed the Bills, who have a great coaching staff, to completely catch their breath and get everybody ready to go. And
Right.
they're not going to make mistakes when they get those opportunities, it feels like.
Right.
Although, the Jets have a good coaching staff too. We said going into this season, I mean, I think we even said going into last season, we talked about how we believed in the Jets coaching staff. We just didn't necessarily believe in their players.
Right.
And I think that what you've seen with the Jets being a winning team this year is in some ways a product of having a good coaching staff that you can believe in, both Saleh and LaFleur.
I would say, guys, for the first time in about 10 to 12 years, they have player development. And I'm not exaggerating. They draft guys with a plan for their development and their fit with the scheme, because Saleh's scheme and LaFleur's scheme, and Ulbrich gets credit too, they're defined. And you're seeing guys come into the system and actually understand what they're being asked to do and grow. And they're first round, second round talents. I mean, they've compiled a ton of picks over the years, and they're playing up to their standards. So I do think this staff gets it, and I think they get it in a lot of different ways. They've been good Saleh's pulled the right buttons when he needed to. I think they actually faked a punt on 4th down against the Bills.
Yes,
the
there
first
was a
time around.
4th and 1 fake punt that kept a drive going. Yep.
He's just pressed a lot of the right buttons this year, going all the way down to benching Zach Wilson for Mike White. And that's a sign of a coach that, should be around for a while.
Yeah, the only one about that button is I think a lot of people would argue he needed to press it sooner.
Yeah, the New England game, Mike White should have got a look in the second half. And if they split with New England, we're not talking about the Jets' playoff chances at 50%. We're figuring out who the Jets should be playing in the playoffs. Yeah. That's the tough one.
Can we answer Sean Ryder's question real quick before we have to get you out of there? Where are some of the areas Bills could attack in this game?
For me, and I know the Bills, when they got Nyheim Hines, it felt like this was going to be what they were doing. And now it's James Cook's show. Throw to the running back. The Jets have not tackled running backs in space very well. And this is in games where they've easily won, like the Bears. David Montgomery broke 1 million tackles that game. That Ramondre Stevenson was a thorn in their side this year. They just don't tackle running backs in space very well. And Allen gets those sugar highs where the play's extending and he's looking for 30-yard completions to Diggs and Davis. And that's because he's amazing and can do that. But I think if somebody sits Josh Allen down in this game and goes, hey, you could take those shots, but you don't always have to do it, you'll get 10 to 12 yards checking it down to your running backs when you have the time. So that would be my number one thing I would look to get in Josh Allen's ear if I was the Bills in this game.
I'm going to add, by the way, the middle of the field. Like, as you would expect, given how well Gardner and Reed have played this year, the Jets are very strong against outside passes. They're 24th in DVOA on passes in the middle of the field. So maybe some crossing routes, but also some Dawson Knox. Like,
man.
Yes.
I
remember him.
Yeah, remember right? Dawson Knox? Like, that would be, I think, a good way for the Bills to attack in this game.
Makes a ton of sense. It's crazy we haven't seen it, but the Jets, we've talked about this going all the way back to July. Whitehead and Joyner are, I would think the weaker spot of the defense, and it's not that they're bad. but you can
No, but
attack
Reed
them.
and Gardner are playing really well. That is
Yes.
the weaker spot of the defense.
And even Mosley's a step slow in coverage. I mean, he's a fine player, but he's not Fred Warner out there. So when you look at it, yeah, that's what teams should do, and it's a little alarming they haven't consistently gone to that well. People challenge Sauce and Reed every single week. Every single week.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Maybe this time.
the line is Jets plus 9.5. Even though the Jets won the last game. You have it at DraftKings at plus 10?
I have it up to the minute because I was just placing wagers while you guys were talking. I had it at 10. Yes, we are at plus 10 on DraftKings.
Yeah, the consensus, the Vegas Insider consensus is 9.5. So some places have it 9.5 and some places have it 10. I mean, if I was putting money on this game, I would take the Jets and the points. I do think the Bills are definitely the better team. Like if you ask me who's going to win this game, I mean, it's hard to see the Jets sweeping the Bills.
Right.
But that's a lot of points, especially if you get 10 instead of 9.5.
It's so disrespectful. And when we were trying to figure out the line that this game would open at, I was guessing it would open at 4.5 and move to maybe 6 by the end of the week. And I was like, unfortunately, I would take the Bills in this one because everything goes their way in terms of how hungry they are for this win. It's at Buffalo, which is really only a 1.5.
You take the Bills straight up, but would you also if you had to bet with the spread, would you take the Bills minus 10 or would you?
No, absolutely not. With the line where it's at, I'm taking the Jets. I think 10 is. I mean, even if the Jets have a chance to backdoor cover that, 10 is a lot of points for a team that has beaten this Buffalo team. The Jets are a really good second half team, which really plays into the spread a lot. So I'm a little surprised it's gotten that far away.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, at around 6, I would be leaning Bills. At 10, I'm taking Jets and the points. I just took the Mike White interceptions, which is a little bit of a hedge in the other way, because if the Jets get hammered, Mike White probably has 2 interceptions in the game, and it's like insurance on the bet. So, by the way, Patrick Sealy, the Jets do not have a 5-2 quarterback in street close. The Jets were 5-2 with no quarterback.
Yes, quarterback wins are not a stat. Wins are not a quarterback stat, and especially in Zach Wilson's case, wins were not a quarterback stat. And you're talking to one of the biggest Zach Wilson defenders on the internet, who feels like, well, no, I feel like he was bad, but he was not as horrible as people think. Once you adjust for the quality of the defenses he had to face, I think he was better than people think. I still think they made the right move by going away from him, but he was not like the worst quarterback in the league this year. He was better than Mayfield. He was better than Davis Mills.
I think we got to get you out of here, right, Connor?
Yeah, but I'll say one last thing. His presser got him benched, right? He just lost the room. He lost the room. And, it's also when you go back to the record situation. I mean, Mike White is 2-0 right now if Braxton Berrios just catches the ball. Mike White made a lot of plays to win that game. And that's why quarterback wins are not a stat, because something like that completely affects that stat specifically.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you to Connor Rogers, SNY TV, NBC Sports Fantasy Football Happy Hour, and PFF. What do you do for PFF?
The Stock Exchange Podcast. We cover the draft all year round.
All right, Tampa Bay Trey.
That's right.
All right, so you can catch him doing all of those things, and he watches the Jets. And thanks for all this cool Jets information, man.
Thank you, guys. Great talking to you. I'll catch up with you soon.
Sounds good. All right. Yeah.
Let's also have a Super Bowl MVP on the bench, Patrick.
We're not going to play who could have won if such and such a guy caught the pass or didn't catch the pass. I mean, the Jets did lose the game, but also if you're asking which quarterback has played better for the Jets this year, it is not a hard question to answer. Even if you adjust Wilson for the quality of the defenses he had to face, White has been better than Wilson this year. Like, that is not a question. And White was better than Wilson last year too.
Yes. And so was Joe Flacco.
Yes. Don't forget, you can make comments. If you are watching the show live, we're on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. If you're listening afterwards as a podcast, come watch us live 1 p.m. Eastern. And you can make comments live on YouTube or on Twitch. And Patrick is a Pats fan who loves seeing them ruin their number 2 overall pick.
He's trying to get me to choose violence here.
the Jets ruining top draft picks is a great tradition. I mean, listen.
Yeah, and Mac Jones is doing great.
Well, listen, yeah, speaking of ruining top draft picks, I think the Patriots are doing some ruining of their own right now. So, I mean, Mike may disagree with me on this, but if you asked me whether Mac Jones's play this year, how much of it has to do with how they're dealing with him versus his own innate abilities, I would think his numbers last year show that how they're dealing with him is a winning out over his own innate abilities. So the Patriots aren't doing the greatest with player development either right now.
I would agree with that. I would totally agree with that.
All right, let's talk some more about this week's games. There are only 13 games this week, so we're only going to cover 5 on the show, but a couple of more 1 p.m. games. Let's start with Philadelphia at the New York Giants. Eagles Super Bowl chances, which we have higher than anybody else.
Right.
48% if they win this game, 39% if they lose. It's interesting. We have because I think everyone agrees they have the inside track to the number 1 seed. Yet for some reason, we have their odds higher than anybody else.
Absolutely. I think you're clicking out again. So if you can,
you know what? That may be me going to look at my notes.
I see.
I may not be able to look at my notes.
Oh no!
Giants playoff odds 45% if they lose, 75% if they win. We're gonna get this notes thing fixed by next week. What are your feelings on the Giants and Eagles in this one?
Eagles win. The end. Period. I mean, this is just the Giants were trying very hard last week to surrender, but they were trying to surrender to the Commanders, who also wanted to surrender, and that's why we had this game that had overtime with them punting back and forth the ball to each other. I guess the closest thing to like a good matchup, the Giants do have a good run defense. They can control that. The Giants still run the ball well. So that's like the Eagles' quote unquote weakness that that hasn't gone away as a narrative in terms of a weakness. Although the Giants running game really is just boiled down to they're doing zone read with Barkley and Danny Jones. That's about all they've got right now. So I can see the Eagles, I can see the Giants finding ways to keep this close, but there's just a mismatch. Like the Giants are sort of like a weaker version of the Titans. The Titans go out there with not a lot except a running back and like a lot of toughness and defense and try to keep the game close. And the Giants do a weaker version of that. And we saw how the Titans fared against the Eagles last week. I don't see that much of a difference this week.
It's interesting. Here's a fun stat. The Eagles offense is number 2 on first downs. Okay. The Giants defense is number 32 on first downs.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I was on a podcast and they were asking why the Giants defense is so low this year overall. And I didn't have a good answer, except, the Giants aren't that good. I mean,
the answer is the Giants aren't that good. They've escaped with close wins. What has gone well for them is the offense. Daniel Jones has been better than the past. It's a great coaching job by Brian Dable that their offense is carrying them to wins because they're like the receivers are Darius Slayton and your mom. So it's amazing, but that is what's happened is their offense has carried them to win. Their defense is not good.
My mom is in fact more reliable at age 83 than Kenny Golladay. So that does absolutely scan there. And I don't know, like it's almost like you try to say, well, what's our defensive game plan against the Giants? It's just like, don't mess up. Just don't mess up. You can constrict. You're not going to – Slayton might get 1 deep pass per game. And other than that, just try to make these run fits. And I think the Eagles now, Jordan Davis is back. Now they can rotate like 18 different guys at defensive tackle, which they couldn't do a couple weeks ago. They should be able to take away those running lanes.
It definitely feels – Patrick Seeley says Eagles should roll like last week, but divisional games get weird. It is true. Yes. Divisional games get weird.
Yes.
And in general, like in the over-under formula that divisional games are slightly lower scoring than other games, all other things being equal. But I really don't think this is going to be a problem. The Giants have run out of Lucky Charms horseshoes.
Yes.
They run out of horseshoe marshmallows. The Vikings have a whole box that is nothing but horseshoe marshmallows, but the Giants ran out of the horseshoe marshmallows, and I just think the Eagles are just a much better team. The line is 6.5, and I would go Eagles and give the points.
Same. Also would have probably gone with green clovers if I was doing the Yucky Charms reference.
All
But it's
right.
definitely going to be orange stars. That's all they've got left. So
Before we hit the next game, Scar988 wants to know if we have thoughts on the Falcons quarterback switch to Desmond Ridder. It's interesting because normally the way we would have expected the season to go is that the Falcons would have been 4 games out of it by this point, and it would have been, well, we have nothing left to lose. Let's find out what we have in Ridder.
Mhm.
But the Falcons are only a game or a game and a half behind Tampa.
Game and a
But
half.
let's be honest, Tampa's going to win that division. So what do they have to lose? Let's find out what they have in Ridder. And Mariota has played reasonably, but he's been terrible on deep passes, and they want to build their offense out of running in deep passes.
Right. According to a website called Football Outsiders, the Falcons still have an 8.6% chance of winning that division because the Buccaneers are this weird mess of a team. I guess we're going to get to them in a minute or so. But yeah, so much of what the Falcons were doing. Interestingly, I looked this up. The Falcons only go 3 and out 13.5% of the time. Like their running game and like their short game is getting them drives. Only the 49ers get more consistent drives than the Falcons. Then the Falcons early in the season would try to go for the home run ball. They could surprise people over the top with the home run ball. The limits of Marcus Mariota have come in recent weeks. People know, that ball's not going to get accurately downfield. Drake London's the only threat downfield. You're not getting that. This is an opportunity. Again, it's a chance to evaluate. It's coming after the bye. I guess my only concern with it is they got back-to-back road games against tougher defenses because they got the Saints, they got the Ravens. I don't think there's a time along the way where they're going to be easy defenses that they could have faced. So this is, and the final thing with that is like Ridder, he has 4 games and then it's over. It's not like he's got to keep going and he has a good run and then the opponent gets a book on him and then he has like a bad game late. He gets 4 games and then he can show everything he's capable of doing right now and they can evaluate from there.
I will also say, if you want to know about Desmond Ridder, search on our site. There's a really good future film room, prospect film room. Derek Klassen felt that Ridder was the best quarterback in last year's class.
Yes, absolutely.
So
and he's got a lot of the traits. So
let's see what he's going to do. So one more 1 p.m. game we want to talk about. I don't have playoff odds for this one because the fact is the Detroit Lions are still in it, but their playoff odds are very low. But it's an interesting game, Minnesota at Detroit, because Vegas is smoking what we are smoking when it comes to the Vikings. The Lions have alternately been favored by 1.5 or 2.5 in this game, despite the fact that they are 5-7 and the Vikings are 10-2.
Yeah, right now I'm seeing Lions -2 at home across with over under of 52, indicating the expectation that this is going to be a shootout back and forth. Lions offense looks really good right now.
Yeah, I will say our over-under formula likes an under in this game.
At that height, I can say
that is a very high. It's like 52.5, and the Lions' defense has actually been pretty good the last 5 or 6 weeks.
Right. You're just seeing stouter play really among their front 7, linebacking core, all those things. And then, it was a really convincing win against the Jacksonville Jaguars. It really just rolled away from the Jaguars. I'm not ready for the Lions to be the team that trips up the Vikings, though. I'm just not there yet.
I do feel a little bit like Justin Jefferson feels a little bit like Thanos. He's inevitable. Like, he makes these catches at the end of these games that are like nobody can cover him, and especially no one on the Lions can cover him.
Right.
And yet, the first time these two teams played this year, the Vikings won by 3 points, and Justin Jefferson had only something like 16 yards.
Right. Well, that the Eagles lost by the Vikings earlier. They got away from Justin Jefferson, and I think it's a Kirk Cousins thing where it's like, oh, I'm seeing double coverage roll that way. My computer brain tells me to check down to Jerry Munt or CJ Ham or something like that, where the computer brain should be like, get it. And I think it was Arif, like a couple weeks ago, said he started to just screw this. Justin's down there somewhere and do that.
Do it.
Right. And also now you have Hawkinson. There's another check down besides Thielen. You can say, here's a guy who can come down and make plays for me, as can Cook along the way. So, the Vikings should be able to score significantly in this game. And yeah, I'm still leaning towards them. Very hard overcoming the Lions' skepticism, despite the fact they've looked so good in the last couple.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the numbers say go with Lions here, and I'm just waiting and waiting for the Lions to just. I'm waiting for the Vikings to finally, lose close games. Like they can't keep winning close games, but
Right.
I don't know. Their schedule is kind of easy the rest of the way, and I could talk. I mean, I guess I'm gonna say I would take the Vikings and the points.
I think so. I mean, Patrick's making an argument over here. Mac Jones and Mike White both look good. Mac Jones looks good for a while. That very soft defense playing this great offensive line of the Lions where you can just sit. They'll be able to run. They'll be able to stay ahead of the sticks. And then the sort of like
and really good receivers. Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Chark are really good receivers.
I
They haven't missed Hawkinson at all. Interestingly, they just
have not.
They've just stopped throwing the tight end. That's all.
Yeah, and that other tight end, that rookie, hasn't made a couple plays, but I think the receiver. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown is good. You're seeing an offensive line just creating everything. I know people were talking about, Jared Goff is this, that, and the other thing. Jared Goff is very high in DVOA. That's a clean pocket. That's nonstop clean pockets, and all the things that nonstop clean pockets do for you.
That is an argument for the offensive lineman, and an argument. I think Jared Goff's DVOA is not an argument for Jared Goff. It is an argument for Ben Johnson as assistant coach of the year.
All right. Is he line coach?
He is. No, he's the offensive coordinator.
Offensive coordinator. I lost track of who their coordinator was. All right, I will buy that. Maybe line coach as well should deserve.
I mean, maybe as assistant coach of the year, or maybe second on my ballot behind Shane Stricken.
Yeah, I'm about to say there's some good things going on here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago I felt very confident about Shane Stricken.
I can't even pronounce it. So yeah,
as my choice, I think Ben Johnson's doing. I mean, what the Lions are doing though is pretty impressive, honestly.
Right. I'm just gonna stay away from the game. I'm staying away from the Vikings games from now on.
4 p.m. We said we were going to talk about Tampa Bay. And now I have notes again, by the way, because my printer. This is the last page my printer printed before it ran out of ink. Tampa Bay at San Francisco, 4 p.m. Surprisingly, not one of the more important games of the week for playoff leverage because these teams are mostly in.
Yeah.
The Buccaneers are still at 83% if they lose. Mm-hmm. The 49ers are still at 88% if they lose.
The Buccaneers can go 6-7, lose to Brock Purdy, and have an 83% chance of making the playoffs.
That's correct.
Only after almost getting their butts handed to them by Andy Dalton until all hell breaks loose in the second half of the fourth quarter on Monday night.
I don't think they almost had their butts handed to them by Andy Dalton. I think they almost had their butts handed to them by Demario Davis and Cam.
Yes, yes, that is much more accurate. Yes, until all hell broke loose in the fourth quarter. That part is true. Only in the NFC South, ladies and gentlemen.
Tom Brady, I will point out the interesting stat I found. ESPN, I'm working on a piece for ESPN for next week about the weaknesses of the various quarterbacks.
Okay.
And Tom Brady has struggled against the blitz for the last couple of years. Not this year. Tom Brady is number 1 in QBR against the blitz. He's 20th against 4 pass rushers. That's weird. That's weird.
It's weird, except their offensive line isn't what it was the last 2 years. You're getting more pressure there.
What are the 49ers going to send? Are they going to send blitzes or are they going to send 4 pass rushers? That's right, kids. They are sending 4 pass rushers.
4 really good pass rushers. Watching the Dolphins 49ers game, and people praise the 49ers linebackers 100%, of course. It's true. The Buccaneers really like running on those early downs, and it looks like they want to try to do what everyone wants to do.
They suck at it.
They suck. They're horrible at it. And then we're going to set up play action. I'm going to point out Tom Brady can't be bothered play faking anymore, but we're not going to get into that right now. It's like he doesn't want to bend that far. If you think you're going to suck the 49ers linebackers in with play action and then they're not going to be in position for underneath passes, bad news from Tua Tagovailoa about this. They're going to be back. They're going to be in those lanes. And one of the reasons I think Tua was firing high a lot last week is because he's trying to get it over linebackers that he realizes we're not sucked in any way, that can get back there and are taking away some of those underneath.
You want to hear something crazy?
Yeah.
Those intermediate middle passes that we read so much about before that game, and then Miami went away from, where they throw more of them than anybody else, but they went away from them in that game because of the 49ers.
Yeah.
We're talking 10 to 19 air yards, middle of the field.
Yeah.
You know the 49ers are a below average defense against those passes?
Amazing, because it seemed like they were in
Their
great position.
rep is so good against those passes. The actual results are not that good on those passes.
Over the middle of the field, 10 to 19. Huh.
But the Dolphins just didn't challenge it. They were like, Fred Warner, we're not challenging them there, even though the numbers said you could challenge them there, but they didn't do it.
A couple of times they did. There were a few passes in there, and they were overthrows.
Yeah.
And I feel pretty confident that it's like, well, I know I got to get it over this line of defense along the way. So, well, maybe that's something that the Buccaneers could exploit.
So I think I may have written this. The line is San Francisco by 3.5. It's this crazy, like, 7th round rookie is favored against Tom Brady thing.
Yep.
And I'm almost kind of thinking I would go San Francisco.
Yeah, well, I mean, I always want to go with that backup quarterback in their first start. I always want to do it.
You do, but they're rarely favored in their first start.
Correct. And that's why my play of the week, I went backtracked, and I just did a 3-legged parlay money line, so straight up bets of the 49ers, the Chiefs, and the Seahawks. 3 teams where I did not love the lines, but I felt confident with the win, or confident with the other 2 wins, and then the 49ers. I'm just curious how this plays out. I don't really know what Brock Purdy has to offer. He can complete short passes in the middle of the field. He can squirt the ball to C-Mac and Debo. And
Some people loved what he did in the first game.
I missed what they really loved.
Ted Wentz.
I watched a guy running into sacks. I saw a guy running into sacks.
I mean, DVOA-wise, that was one of the worst San Francisco passing games of the year. But it wasn't bad. It was just average.
I mean, he gets the ball over the middle to Kittle with a guy in his face. That's a pretty impressive throw. There's another quick step throw, a couple of those that are fine over the middle of the field. He benefits a lot from defensive pass interference. And, I mean, there's just one play where he thinks he's Michael Vick, and he basically runs into Melvin Ingram, like trying to do like a Superman scramble around the back. A couple of plays where it didn't look like he managed the pocket well. I mean, I see the adequacy to get through, games, et cetera, et cetera. I don't see somebody who is like, well, if you watch the film, your eyes will be open. I did. They weren't.
Let's talk about one more thing I'll say about this game. The over-under is 37.5. I know. The over-under formula loves the over in this game.
I was going to do 49ers and over in a parlay, and I got cold feet about it. But I think that there's points off turnovers opportunities either way. I think there's field goal opportunities either way. My brain kept landing on 21-16, and I kept not playing the over, but I can see it. Yeah.
All right. Miami at the Los Angeles Chargers at 8 p.m. Flex football.
Take a Rama. Take apocalypse.
Yeah, we are really having a Tua. We're having a Tua versus Herbert take apocalypse.
Take apocalypse. The take apocalypse is coming, and I'm dancing to the end of it.
But let's say this about Tua and Herbert. Tua's defense sucks, and Herbert's defense sucks more.
That's true. Herbert's
and that's, I think, the biggest thing in this game. I mean, and Tua's defense doesn't suck. They're actually average. They've been better. I went and looked at since Bradley Chubb showed up because Miami has an interesting dichotomy. Miami has a very high pass rush win rate in ESPN's pass rush win rate and a terrible pressure rate. Terrible. By ESPN's own charting, they're 29th in pressure rate. I'm sure at the Pro Football References charting, they're even worse. Mm-hmm. Now, that's improved to 31% since Chubb showed up, but even that is just 18th in the league. But their pass defense, we're only talking 4 games, but their pass defense has improved from 27th to 12th since Chubb showed up. So their defense has not sucked for at least the last 4 games. The Chargers defense sucks. Oh, and by the way, those intermediate middle passes that Miami loves so much and didn't throw against Fred Warner, they will throw plenty against Kenneth Murray and Drew Tranquil. And the
Yes.
Chargers are 26th in defensive DVOA against those passes.
Yeah, and there's going to be running plays. And one thing that Tua was not, I mean, what the Dolphins couldn't do was run the ball effectively for most of that game. That sets up more third and longs, obviously. You can run the ball still against the Chargers. It's not like last year's nightmare Chargers run defense, but it's a pretty bad run defense overall.
I forgot to mention, this is the most important game for our playoff odds. The Dolphins are 97% with a win, 78% with a loss.
Okay.
The Chargers are 40% with a win, 8% with a loss. They cannot lose this game.
They cannot lose this game. They might lose this game.
They probably are going to feel. I feel good about the Dolphins in this game, actually.
Right. And I'm sorry, I short circuit with the word Justin Herbert. I almost have like a reaction. I start twitching without saying the word here. Okay. The offensive line of the Chargers right now, it is two rookies, including Jamari Sailor, who everyone talks about is really good at left tackle. He was really good at left tackle the first 4 weeks. 5 weeks. So guys have figured him out. The right tackle, I forget the guy's name, but it's not Storm Norton, and it's not Storm Norton's backup. It's Storm Norton's backup's backup.
Right, it was a practice squad guy. I don't
Yes.
remember his name either, but I know what you're talking about. He's not.
And Storm Norton was not good. Storm Norton was bad.
It's a bad of the bad of the bad. Yeah.
It's the bad of the bad of the bad. Chandler Jones, who I thought was ready to retire, had 3 sacks and a deflected pass the other day. Guys are coming right up the middle. So the folks who say Justin Herbert, it's not his fault. A lot of it is not his fault. That is legitimately true. The folks who say Joe Lombardi should be throwing it deep. If Joe Lombardi tried to throw it deep, Justin Herbert would be dead right now. So there's a little bit of a kind of keep an eye on what you're talking about with these things. But it's going to be very hard for that Chargers offense that folks want to see. I don't think you're going to see it in this game. I don't think you're going to see it in the foreseeable future because there's just not enough on that offensive line.
DVOA just feels that the Chargers are a bad team this year.
Yeah.
Like, yes, they're 6-6.
6-6.
They are much lower in DVOA than the Jets or the Patriots.
You had games like the Cardinals games. They come away with the win, but it's the Cardinals. And they're grinding to get this win in the fourth quarter, where the two teams are just punting back and forth. And you're facing this bad opponent. You're facing a bad opponent that is really bad in the second half. And eventually you come away with the win. But that's kind of like the Chargers are showing you that's kind of the level they're on. They're on the level with opponents like the Raiders, like the Cardinals, who they play neck and neck with most weeks.
So it's Dolphins minus 3.5. And 51.5 is the over-under.
Think like the system has to like the under, right?
The system says slightly under.
Okay.
And strong on the Dolphins.
Let's do it. I wonder what the parlay would be. I'm not going to be able to pull it up on time. There's too many buttons.
But I feel good about the Dolphins in this game. I just feel like the Chargers, I feel like we're having too much of a take-a-rama about Herbert versus Tua. Like, I still feel like Herbert is very special, and literally he's stuck in an everything that could go wrong has gone wrong situation on offense this year, where he's hamstrung by the offensive coordinator. He's hamstrung by the offensive line injuries. His receivers have not been healthy. Like, I feel like using this year to make a judgment on Herbert just feels wrong to me. But it doesn't change the fact that all those things are bad.
All those things are true.
And for Miami, they're not.
Right. And you'll see tomorrow's walkthrough what I think about that, about the quarterback who's below Marcus Mariota in DVOA and DER. But I do agree that Herbert has the traits to be an outstanding quarterback. It doesn't matter when so many things are going wrong.
Right.
And when you're facing a team that has more things going right. And the take-a-rama is, again, the battle for third best quarterback in the 2020 draft class, folks.
Right. Well, you're putting Hurts above both of them, huh?
Of course I am, because he's better than both of them.
I will say Bill Barnwell had a big ESPN Plus piece today, and he put Tua second.
Okay.
And Hurts third. Hurts third. And Herbert fourth.
And Herbert fourth. So I'm not
Burrow first. And I think most people at this point would put Burrow first because he's definitely worked on his clear weakness, right? Which is he's taking fewer sacks.
Exactly. He's right. He cut down on the sacks, does more underneath stuff. He's developing, and he also did the things.
He did do the things. Yes.
He did the things. And folks, if me and Barnwell start agreeing, watch out, because that's bad news for the world.
All right, that does it. Because of my mic issue, I cannot read the sponsorship, but you should definitely use our friends at Underdog Fantasy because they sponsor our shows and because they provide a chance to bet on over-under player lines, even if you're in a state where that is normally not allowed, and like me, and they're great, and they're good games. UnderdogFantasy.com or download from the App Store. Use promo code OUTSIDERS. And I promise I will have either my screen or my printer fixed by the next time we do one of these shows.
And remember, folks, they have NBA, they have NHL. It's like,
yes, other sports. People, you also may be interested in other sports.
Right, a lot of over-unders and props and things like that for these other sports. It's like, I've already got all the things I'm doing for NFL. I'm not going to go to Underdog.
I wonder if they've already started doing best ball baseball drafts. Go grab your Xander Bogaerts and your Trey Turner.
Yeah,
Trey Turner coming to Philadelphia, man.
I'm going to pretend I know. I have
He's very, very good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
My neighbors will be happy.
Here's the thing we don't get in football. San Diego signed Xander Bogaerts to an 11-year contract.
Oh, my God.
He's 30. They signed him to a contract until he's 41.
It's such a different world.
It's
Except for Mahomes. It's such a different world. Like, I can imagine an 11-year contract and all of us trying to analyze it. And somebody like, well, a player of his type might still be good at 43. Who, Tom Brady? And nobody? A punter? Who? The
only player in the NFL who's worth an 11-year contract is Justin Turner. Justin Tucker, I mean. Justin Tucker. Because kickers are still good into their 40s.
Absolutely. It won't cost that much.
Okay, 1 p.m. Eastern every day for the shows. Tomorrow, Kale and Jackson will take on some of these hot takes in the Hot Take Review show. Monday, Mike will be back to review the weekend in action. I'll be here Tuesday for the DVOA data show. So 1 p.m. Eastern for the live streams. Thank you so much, folks. Have a good week 14.